So will Alabama's hot streak on the recruiting trail continue today? We think so.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn, and thank you for making this your first or second or third listen every single day. We appreciate you guys so very much. Jimmy, sounds like Alabama's going to get a commitment today. You're going to put out a video soon as it is official. And, it's good. Jackson Lloyd from California, big offensive lineman who we've talked about a lot here recently. It sounds like he's going to be Alabama's today, come about 2 o'clock Central Time.
Yeah, that's the official prediction from BOL. Tim Watts himself made the prediction. Andrew Bone and Joseph Hastings has RPM'd him to Alabama, as well as Wilt Fong and the National On 3 guys. So this is definitely the expectation here. And what a big pickup it will be. This is not yet, I think, an official 5-star, but this is a kid ranked in 5-star territory. It would also be my expectation that by when all this stuff is certified, let's remember that the final rankings are all that matter. It's not like you get to December and you get a ranking and then people say, well, this is no good because last March you were just a 4-star. It's a year-long process till you get to the final rankings. And I fully expect Jackson Lloyd to be maybe even a universal 5-star, 5-star plus, meaning he's a 5-star in all the services. That's how good this kid is. And when you think about how big it is, Luke, when you're talking about a line of scrimmage guy to be a 5-star that Alabama signs, who's not only not from Alabama, not even from a neighboring state. I mean, you go to California to get a 5-star tackle. That's just truly big time recruiting, especially in the NIL era. But give DeBoer and his guys a lot of credit here. DeBoer was in on him early. DeBoer recruited this kid when he was at Washington. So there was some familiarity. Jackson Lloyd was, I believe, either the first kid. He was among the very first kids offered by Kalen DeBoer when Kalen DeBoer got the Alabama job. And I believe he was even offered before they hired Chris Cap, the offensive line coach. So this was all about.
To be clear, you said not Chris Caps.
Yeah, to be clear. I didn't think about that before. The new offensive line coach is Chris
God,
Cap.
when you just said that, I did a double take.
Realizing it myself. But
because this is not a Chris Caps podcast. It's a Ryan Williams podcast.
Ryan would be upset. But no, this is just a big pickup in every single way. It's going to dramatically help the recruiting rankings if you're into stuff like that. I'm just into this, improving the talent level on the team, improving the offensive line. Let me tell you, Luke, we're one step closer. Should Alabama land Jackson Lloyd this afternoon, should that happen, and you now have Lloyd, Carroll, and Waldrop, you're just 2 steps away from my dream offensive line class, which would include adding Ty Haywood, the tackle from Texas, another 5-star, and Micah DeBose, the guard from Viger, who is going to be making his official visit this upcoming weekend. If Alabama signs those 5 linemen, hey, it's one position, it's one unit, Luke. I will go back and check and look, but I'll be pretty adamant that this has to be the best offensive line group ever signed by Alabama, better than any of the Saban offensive line groups, which is saying a lot. I mean, but I believe it would be because Lloyd, Haywood, and Carroll could all end up being 5-stars. DeBose is a take at Ohio State, LSU, and Georgia, and you get him, leaving only the lightest recruited guy being Mal Waldrop, who I think we all know is a guy Alabama should take every year, an Alabama legacy, who's the left tackle at Central Phoenix City, who's going to be a center, who could have committed to Clemson. And there's every reason to take Mal Waldrop at center. So this would be the best offensive line group, I think, better than anything Saban signed. If you land those Jackson Lloyd and then DeBoer and Ty Haywood, which is, no guarantees there, but we feel BOL pretty good about Haywood and DeBoer.
Yeah, DeBoer does seem to have sort of that Caleb Cunningham vibe in the sense that every time he visits somewhere, he seems to love it. And look, I'm not faulting either one of those kids. I mean, because if you visit Ohio State and Alabama and LSU and they're fawning all over you every time, yeah, you're going to love it. But that I still think in the end, Mika ends up choosing Alabama, like you said. I feel much better about Ty Haywood right now. It's certainly, the canceling of the Oklahoma visit, and it just feels like he's going to end up in this class too. And then all of a sudden, you're right. I mean, look, if you want to have the best position group in recruiting in the country, I think you'd want that position group to be offensive line. It changes annually because sometimes the receivers are better than overall than the linemen, and the defensive linemen may be better than the linebackers or whatever. But I would say on the whole, if all things remaining equal, if you said, okay, what's the least sexy group to recruit outside of a specialist like a punter or kicker? Well, you'd probably say offensive lineman. Yeah. But you said, okay, what group would you prefer to have the best in the country in? I would say offensive lineman, because if you don't have offensive lineman, you can't do much. So
I would take a great offensive line. I mean, I'll take a great offensive line and average skill players.
Agreed.
If it's the other way around, your spectacular skill players playing behind a bad offensive line, it doesn't matter how good those guys are. It doesn't matter. The running backs will have absolutely no holes. They'll have absolutely no room. The receivers, won't get the ball because the quarterback will be on his back. You have to be really good up front or nothing else will work. And offensive line has been a bit of a struggle for Alabama the last 3 years. But I want to remind people that as much as we say that the offensive line has been a struggle, it's been a struggle per Alabama standards and how good Alabama should be. But Alabama truly wasn't terrible up front, or you wouldn't have done things like won a Heisman Trophy, gone to the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years, even had a good team in 22. I mean, it hasn't been good per Alabama standards. But, Alabama, we've been so great for so long. It's so easy to kind of lose perspective on things. And I think that's one of them in terms of how bad the offensive line has been. You can't be bad on the offensive line and win all these games. But Alabama's got to be much better to win a national championship up front. And this recruiting class is headed, headed in that direction.
Not to beat a dead center who transferred to Ohio State, but yesterday on the SEC Network, because there was not much else on, I was flipping around, and I always check this time of year the SEC Network in hopes that there is some game from last year or a classic game on or whatever. And it was the SEC championship game from this year. Excuse me. And so it was funny in that game, like right when I turned it on, I'm not kidding. Right when I turned it on, they were talking about how bad the snaps had been and how the snaps had been so low all year. And they talked about it, maybe Seth McLaughlin's just nervous because he's a little bit smaller and there are guys in front of him trying to, maul him as soon as he snaps that ball. And I mean, they like, just as I flipped this channel on, it wasn't like I had to wait a minute. It was just there, and it was a stark reminder. But there is also something else. And again, this goes to what we were talking about. They did overall, outside of the snaps, the offensive line played marvelously that game. And when the offensive line plays really well, you can beat the best team in the country that hadn't lost in a gazillion years and had won the last 2 national championships. So the point is, this is great, as I'm sure that's my deadgum daughter calling me. But Jimmy, you any comments on that?
I don't have too much comments. I guess your daughter not being able to reach you on your cell phone, as you're always muting her now. She's calling your office phone, which I think is really creative for such a young gal. But, one thing about that comment about how, boy, Seth, the snaps are probably bad because he's nervous playing Georgia on this platform and how good Georgia is. That just ignores a fact that actually Alabama would not have beaten Georgia in 2021, if not for how great the offensive line played in that game, earning Alabama a spot in the playoffs in 2021 because of how great the offensive line was. In particular, that game, Seth, who played great, who snapped it fine, and who was matched up in that game against, of all people, Jordan Davis. He had to snap the ball and get Jordan Davis blocked in 2021. So Seth's snap problems were the yips. It wasn't because he can't snap the ball. It was because he developed a mental issue with snapping last year. Ohio State believes they can cure that, and that's what's going to go on with them, but it's irrelevant to us because Alabama center is now Parker Brasser.
All I'm going to say, guys, get you a daughter who loves to talk to you as much as mine loves to talk to me. That's all I've got to say. I don't know why. I'm like, outside of talking on this thing, I'm the worst person in the world to talk to. But let's talk about LinkedIn. LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're not looking in the right place, yo. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. That's where you do it. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they'll apply, but that's okay. Before we get into your countdown, Jimmy, a couple of quick notes. First of all, the basketball team scheduled another Dakota squad. South Dakota State will be coming to Tuscaloosa this year. You know, they make the trip to North Dakota, sort of give Grant Nelson a homecoming, which is wonderful. But South Dakota State, they're the Jackrabbits, I believe. They'll be coming, and we've played them numerous times. And while they aren't, world beaters, I hate that term, by the way. They are good enough to not usually hurt your RPI or whatever it's called these days. So, and it doesn't matter because Alabama's strength of schedule is going to be so ridiculously high that Alabama could schedule Mumford and be fine. Mumford and Sons, for that matter, they could schedule them. But regardless,
4 Sons, is that 5 guys?
I don't know how many sons. They could schedule 5 guys, the guys that work over at the burger place.
Hey, do you know anything about that band? Is it literally a dude and his sons? Because I don't think that it is.
I don't think it is either. And didn't they get in some trouble because like one of them said something sort of moderately political and I can't remember what it was. And then they broke up and maybe they're back together. So maybe it was just Mumford and it was like, okay, and we're the Sons. I don't know.
Perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. You can't say anything moderately political in this country anymore. No, there's no hot political takes on either side.
I want to talk about Zay Mincey. I do, but look, I know that I'm late to the party on all the music scenes. And when I'm 51, this is a horrible admission probably, but you know who might save the country? Eminem. He might save the country. That song,
Taylor.
This song he's got, Houdini, like it is basically like just saying, I'm so sick. I mean, he's basically like, I'm just so sick of all this crap. I mean, I'm just, and then he ends up saying, to heck with everybody at the end. I mean, he says it a little more ardently. But
I'm today. You sold me. I'm for whatever reason.
Have you ever heard the song?
I think I've missed this somehow because
it's kind of new. It's not super new. And for those who are young listening, go, Luke, that was 6 months ago. Well, I'm 51. This is how long it takes me to get stuff now. So, I just tried on bell bottoms the other day. They're wonderful.
We just now heard of Billie Eilish last week.
Anyway, Eminem might save us all again. But anyway.
He saved the NFL draft.
He did. He saved that. Remember when he was in the booth with Chris Fowler and Curb Herbstreit? And I don't know what he was on, but he was on something. Anyway, that was before he got sober.
He was on a big bowl of awkward. because that whole thing was just terrible. I think I had to turn the channel because I just couldn't stand
He was all hopped up on goofballs.
It was so cringy. I turned to watch another game for a few minutes.
All right, so Zay Mincey. Let's talk about him because we have reached him. He's number 49 on your countdown, I believe. Is that correct?
He's number 49, solid 2 cornerback. Don't have a lot to say about him other than, boy, I mean, when you see, for those who haven't seen Zay Mincey, particularly, when you see Zay Mincey on Saturdays in his uniform, you're going to immediately go, that's an NFL football player. He looks the part as well as anyone on this roster. I mean, he plays cornerback, which means, obviously we have bigger, stronger guys. But for a cornerback, you look at him and you might think he's Richard Sherman. I mean, he's just tremendous size for the position. He did do well this spring. I mean, this was a guy who, some freshmen are just very quiet, some struggle. Zay didn't really struggle much in his spring at Alabama. He did pretty well. He will be, I would think, a contender to start. I'm projecting Deshaun Jones being Alabama's second starting cornerback, but Deshaun needs to bring it because staying ahead of guys like Zabian Brown and Zay Mincey won't be easy. Zay Mincey, as of this date, as we talk, I think we signed him. He's a 5-star prospect and looked like a 5-star this spring. I think this is a kid that will live up to immense recruiting hype. I think he's too good not to play. I think he'll be a integral part of special teams this fall. And Zay Mincey we signed him with his stock was sky high. And if anything, he's just a stock up guy even today.
Big fan. I know a lot of the talk centers around Zabian Brown, but big fan of Zay Mincey. Big fan of all these young defensive backs. We hadn't gotten to Red Morgan yet, obviously, but he certainly will be on this list before you know it. I just think that it's going to be a nice group. Jalen Mbakwe, who we talked about yesterday, a bunch of guys are probably going to fall right in these 40s is what I'm willing to bet, Jimmy. What people don't know, I don't get to look at your list. I mean, I'm just as surprised as other people are. I mean, we just talked. You tell me right before we're about to do this podcast who they are so I can put them in the little thing right there. And that's it. Before we go to break, Courtney Morgan's already had some more tweets. They are very confusing to me. I think that they're all good. I think that they probably, he's not trying to reach out to guys like me. This tweet has a picture of a guy holding a national championship trophy. And then he's like, but the person is not blurred out, but just sort of like in blue paisley or something. And he says, quote, how to turn a top dog into an underdog, ? #cold summer, #roll tide. I don't know what any of that means. I hope it means something very good. I'm assuming it does, or he wouldn't tweet it. It would be very weird if our general manager were tweeting bad stuff. But I'm wondering, because some Auburn fans brought this up, is his whole cold summer with the freezy face emoji, is that a shot at Hugh Freeze, or is he just saying, like cold is like the new hot? People used to say that's hot. Now people say that's cold,
Exactly. Yeah, it has absolutely zero to do with Auburn.
That's what I thought.
I mean, zero. It has to do with cold. It's kind of like, when the kids say, oh, that's sick. They don't mean that it has COVID. They mean that it's cool. So something that's cold is awesome. And obviously Tuscaloosa is very famous for its hot summers. So when they say it's going to be a cold summer, I mean, they're hipping with it. Again, we're not the target audience for this. We just heard of Billie Eilish last week. So we're not even sure whether Mumford & Sons is a dude with his sons. We're not even sure of that. So
we're more Sanford & Son than Mumford & Son,
I've never heard this Eminem song that Luke has. So I'm going to literally do that.
I implore you to listen to it on the way.
As soon as the show is over, I got to get in the car and go to an appointment. But the wife's driving and she's going, what are you doing? And I'm like, Googling this Eminem song. What do you think?
And it's hilarious. Because again, I'm probably not the best person to make this judgment call. I think Eminem's the best rapper of all time. Now, there may be more influential in terms of, social justice or whatever, but Eminem tackled all that. And let me tell you the thing I would want to do least in this world. Number one is tackle Derrick Henry. Number two is sing a diss track about Eminem and then have him fire back at me because he will eviscerate you.
Oh no. Yeah, that's bad. He's the greatest diss tracker ever.
Yeah. And he never starts them. somebody always comes at him and then he's like, all right, I mean, I'm just going to talk about you and your mama and your problems. And then next thing you know, like Machine Gun Kelly changed genres. He went from rap to like some sort of metal, and then he's doing some acting. He's like, I can't. And he made
a rep here. You're
I don't know
ruining
who Benzino is. I don't know who this guy Benzino is. All I know is Eminem made him cry. He was like, I'm so tired of people talking about Eminem.
You're ruining our rep here with your incredible knowledge of pop culture here.
I've learned all this in the last 3 days.
This is e-news. Oh, you've learned all this in the last 3 days.
I went down a rabbit hole of this thing because I found it so interesting, and I was looking for a way to work it in. And, the Zay Mincey to Eminem transition seems so smooth. But let's talk about FanDuel. We're so fired. Okay, FanDuel. Look, you love FanDuel, right? We do. Summertime means baseball. It used to mean the NBA Finals, but they're over now. And you can also bet on College World Series. That's going on. I would go ahead and, if I were you, I'd bet on Texas A&M and Tennessee. Those are the two I'd take, just me. Yeah. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the ballpark right there in Omaha. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add to your big old summer bucket list with a load of cash. Just go visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, get that 200 smacks, and then next thing you know, you'll be writing me a thank you letter. All right, so next on your list, number 48. I haven't had a lot of disagreement with you on this list. I really haven't. I think everybody's about where I think they should be. I would have Caleb Odom in the 30s. Now, I say that without actually knowing where I'd put anybody else. I think based on what I've seen and what I've heard, Caleb Odom's going to be higher on this list. Now, if you're talking about just right now, this is where okay, but I'm willing to bet if you did an end of the season roster countdown, this dude's in the 30s, maybe the 20s.
And we will do an end of the season. We'll do a pre-spring 2025 ranking, of course. But first of all, Caleb Odom, just like Zay Mincey, but he maybe even more so, stock-up guy. This is a stock-up guy. This is a guy to get excited about. This is a guy to, hey, this guy is going to help Alabama win ball games sooner rather than later. Interesting guy playing wide receiver, even though he's projected to play tight end by virtually everyone, not just the recruiting industry, by all the schools that recruited him. Alabama recruited him to play tight end. But DeBoer felt like Alabama needed more size at receiver. He wanted a bigger guy. And they watched tape of Caleb Odom. They actually watched tape of him practicing at Alabama during the bowl practice. That's where they saw Caleb Odom and went, you know what? He should be playing wide receiver. And he, of course, signed up to do that. The reason I have him, if you want to say low at 48, and I get that that's not as high as some people might expect. It's just trying to figure out who's going to be in the first team wide receiver rotation. And I think this is my opinion right now, and you'll obviously hear these names later in the countdown. Jeremy Bernard, Kobe Prentice, and Kendrick Law. I think those guys will be the, quote, starters, the top three guys. Then you've got Ryan Williams up there. Then that's when the Caleb Odom question comes. Is Caleb Odom fifth, or is he behind Cole Adams and Jaron Hamilton? I still think he might be behind those guys, and that's where Luke could be completely correct, and he should be higher than this. I just have Caleb Odom eighth among the receivers. I think Luke would agree that Prentice, Bernard, and Law should be one through three. I'm going to have Ryan Williams in that 4 area, but I also have Cole Adams and Jaron Hamilton higher than Caleb Odom. They'll be a little bit later on the countdown. But that's why I have Odom here, because I sort of have him as the 8th receiver. Now, I do believe the 8th receiver in this offense will play some first-team snaps and will catch some balls. And that's where I have Caleb Odom's freshman season.
All very fair. Full disclosure, I would say I would put Bernard as the number 1 receiver, and then I'd put Ryan Williams. I'm a fool. I'm stupid. I'm buying into all the hype because I've seen him. I've called him. I'm buying into all the hype. I'm willing to die on this hill. I might get shot down right off of it. I may fall right on my face. And I have learned to temper my enthusiasm about some of these freshmen. I ain't tempering it about Ryan Williams. Ryan, I'm putting all the eggs in your basket, bro. And then I would probably say Prentice. And then, Jimmy, I might go Odom. I might.
Wow.
And again,
you're right.
I don't know as much about him, but since I'm going out on a limb, it ain't going to hurt me anymore to put Caleb out there with me.
Well, except that, he is 240 pounds.
It's a strong limb, Jimmy.
It needs to be a strong limb. Might be a thin but strong limb to hold you and Caleb. Now, Ryan Williams, he can be supported by a pretty thin limb, but Caleb, big dude. No, you could be exactly right. And frankly, it's a good situation where I just named who I think are the top 8 receivers at Alabama. I think, other than Bernard at 1, which I think is pretty just solid, I think any order is anyone's guess. And Luke could be right. Ryan Williams could easily be second receptions. Caleb Odom could be top 4. I could see that for sure. I have him at 8. I could see it happening. But I do think 8 receivers will play snaps with the first team. And that's a couple more than you would normally see. But I think that's just the DeBoer, Nick Sheridan offense.
That's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll Tide.